Are we barreling towards war with Iran? Overnight, just after midnight, the Iranian defense minister canceled all flights over Tehran, announced the cessation of flights, both internationally and domestic. According to reports, the Revolutionary Guard of Iran, they've canceled all leave, saying that they're in, quote, a state of war. There are emergency meetings, of course, being held in Israel, and the United States military officials flying to Israel right now to prepare for what the Biden administration believes will be an imminent attack. And the United States Fifth Fleet in the Persian Gulf has been brought to 100% combat readiness over the past few hours. What is going on? Let's ask former U.S. Marine, former UN Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter, and welcome to the show. Scott, of course, George W. Bush, going back many decades, calling Iran one of the axis of evil. The Israeli government has wanted the United States, it seems, to agitate to be involved in a war with Iran for many decades. Benjamin Netanyahu said it in front of Congress that Libya, Iraq, and Iran were, of course, a major problem. Are we heading towards war with Iran? What is your assessment of this?
Well, we could be. I mean, Israel, let's put this in perspective. Israel launched a unprovoked act of aggression against sovereign Iranian territory when it attacked the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria. And the Iranians had long told the Israelis that an attack against Iranian territory by Israel would prompt an attack by Iran against Israel. So there's going to be a retaliation. This is 100% certain. The question is, will this retaliation then escalate to general war? We know the United States doesn't want to fight a general war with Iran. The reason why the Obama administration signed off on the Iran nuclear deal in 2015 is that the only option we had, if we didn't capitulate on our terms regarding Iran's nuclear program, was a war that we could not win. Every president since Obama has recognized that we cannot win a war against Iran. Donald Trump learned that lesson when he was talking about carrying out retaliatory actions on Iranian soil. He was told by the Pentagon that the escalation that would occur after such a strike would lead to a general war that would see American resources in the Middle East destroyed and America unable to respond effectively for many months. And even then, victory could not be assured. So I think the United States right now is telling Israel, we will not be a part of your war with Iran. You started this. You need to pay the price. Iran will retaliate. And I believe the United States will then put pressure on Israel to limit what they do next. If Israel wants a general war with Iran, the danger is such. Israel will lose. Israel knows it will lose because Israel has wargamed this the past 2 years together with the United States, and it doesn't turn out well for Israel, which means Israel could be facing existential crisis, which means the Samson option kicks in, which means Israel will use nuclear weapons. And that's the danger we're in right now. Israel got themselves involved in something that could escalate to where Israel faces the real threat of physical destruction and therefore will use nuclear weapons. And the United States is scared to death about this.
I mean, I just got chills. I mean, it's absolutely terrifying because my biggest concern, yes, is nuclear war. But it's also Americans that are in these bases all throughout the region right now. And basically sitting guinea pigs, like sitting ducks, waiting for this to happen. And the Biden administration has acknowledged this. I mean, months ago, we know the Biden administration said it's only a matter of time before Americans are attacked in the region again. So the Biden administration is fully aware that this is going to happen. And I've been saying here on the show, like, maybe this is me being naive, but get them the hell out of there. If we're not going to be involved in a war, then bring them home. Get them the hell out of there. I mean, is the Biden administration allowing these members of the military there as sitting ducks right now?
Well, it's not just the Biden administration. These military members have been there for successive presidential administrations. But under Donald Trump and now under Joe Biden, it's clear these forces have no meaningful purpose. There's no real mission. The countering ISIS mission has long been over. The presence in Syria is about harassing Bashar al-Assad. The presence in Iraq is about harassing Iran. Neither one of these further legitimate American national security objectives. And so, yes, we are sitting ducks. The good news is Iran is not going to start out by striking American forces because Iran doesn't want a war with the United States either. The bad news is if Israel retaliates against Iran, then American forces will be struck. The Fifth Fleet can go on 100% alert, but it'll be 100% destroyed. People only need to reflect on the accuracy of the Iranian missiles fired at the Al-Assad Air Base in 2020 in retaliation for the assassination of Qasem Soleimani to know that the Iranians have the capacity to hit any target they want to, and those weren't even the best missiles Iran has. And there's nothing in the Israeli arsenal or the American arsenal that can shoot these missiles down. So Israel is a sitting duck. The United States is a sitting duck. And Israel needs to be careful. There's a lot of talk right now in the Netanyahu government that if Iran strikes Israel, that Israel will strike Iranian nuclear targets in an effort to finish this chapter. First of all, the Iranian nuclear targets are dug in, well protected. Israel will not destroy them. But you know what's not well protected? Dimona. And if Israel strikes Iranian nuclear targets, it's a 100% guarantee that Dimona will be destroyed. And that could lead to a nuclear catastrophe in its own right. Dimona being the home of Israel's nuclear weapons program, the breeder reactor that produces the fissile material for Israel's nuclear weapons.
You know, then there's the straightforward approach. The United States is there, get us out of there so we don't get attacked. Hopefully American forces are not attacked. But what if there is a false flag, right? I mean, there's certainly a long history of this happening, going Gulf of Tonkin. Well, we could use USS Liberty, remember the Maine. So we have U.S. forces there. This is what I worry about in this new world. I mean, call me a cynical bastard, but I mean, we have American forces there. It could be very easily claimed quickly through the U.S. media and the parrot media that this attack on a U.S. warship came from Iran. And there's no amount of investigation that's going to happen to prove that that's the case. And then we are sucked into a war. We've seen this repeatedly. Are you worried about any kind of major false flag attacks happening against U.S. forces?
I think false flag attacks happen when people aren't serious about going to war. Iran's going to bomb the hell out of Israel very soon. I mean, I don't mean to smile about that. I'm just saying this is inevitable. You don't need a false flag. It's going to happen.
But I mean, U.S. being involved in it, being in the middle of
it. Israel will be so overwhelmed about getting the snot kicked out of it by Iran and coming up with a retaliation against Iran that there's no time for the complexities of false flag. I'm not worried about a false flag here. I'm worried about the real deal. I'm worried about Iran banging Israel, Israel banging Iran, and then Iran banging everybody. And that's the threat to me. There's not going to be a USS Liberty scenario here. That happens when nobody wants to get involved. Iran is getting ready to pound Israel. Israel's preparing to pound Iran, and America's stuck in the middle.
So this is an inevitability. I mean, it seems that this is an inevitability at this point, and everyone seems to know that this is about to happen. What do you think is going to happen ultimately, based on military strategy? What do you think is going to happen inside of Israel and the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea?
I think the Iranians will launch a strike that will be punishing, but not overwhelming. It'll be a signal to Israel and to the world that that there's not carte blanche to strike Iran, that Iran is a red line. And they need to establish this now because a weak response from Iran just opens the door for further attacks. So there will be a very strong Iranian response. But I do believe that the Iranians want to have a safety valve, meaning that the strong response will not be so overwhelming that even the United States can't tell Israel, don't retaliate. I think the United States is going to go there and tell the Israelis, you started this. This is your mess. We're not going to save you on this one. So don't do anything stupid in retaliation. You kick the hornet's nest, you're going to get stung. But don't expect us to burn down the neighborhood as a result. The question now is, how serious is Joe Biden about putting pressure on Israel? Because in order to stop an Israeli response, it's going to take a lot of pressure. Look, I lived through the last time Israel was attacked by a foreign power during the Gulf War. I know firsthand, the passions that existed in Israel as they were receiving Iraqi SCUD hits over and over and over again over multiple weeks, and the demands that were put in place to retaliate, and what it took for the United States to prevent that retaliation, and what it took is the United States to promise overwhelming military force against Iraq to prevent further attacks. The United States isn't going to be bombing Iran on behalf of Israel. So now we lack that tool. We lack the ability to say, don't worry, we've got this. Now we're going to tell Israel, don't retaliate. We're not going to do anything. That's a completely different diplomatic problem. And it can only have muscle if Joe Biden says, not only will we abandon you on Iran, we'll abandon you altogether. We'll pull the plug on everything. You will never get another bomb, another fighter aircraft, nothing. We are walking away from you because you are a suicide pill that's going to take us all down. And I don't know if the Biden administration has the ability to do that, not in an election year. So I'm afraid that this thing could very well spiral out of control because the United States will not take the decisive action up front necessary to forestall an Israeli overreaction, retaliation. We should have stopped them from striking Syria. We never did. We've turned a blind eye to them bombing Syria, and now it got out of control. We should have stopped them from going into Gaza. We never did because we are unable to meaningfully stand up to Israel until it's too late. And I'm afraid right now it's too late.
Is there anything in this situation that's a benefit to the United States of America?
No, this is what we're doing is reaping the product of decades of just dysfunctional Middle East policy. We've allowed ourselves to be maneuvered into this position by others through weakness, through inattention, through just bad advice. We have bad policymakers. We have people who continue to believe that the United States is a global singularity and doesn't understand that we are very much a diminished power, that we lack the capacity to back up with any meaningful military power projection the policies that we're seeking to implement in the region. And now we're going to pay the price.
Yeah, I still struggle. I try every day to see how any of this is a benefit to the United States. When I see people arguing that we need to send more money, send more weapons, send our entire Fifth Fleet to the Persian Gulf, keep men and women in military uniforms standing there right now as guinea pigs ready to be attacked. I fail to see how this is a benefit to us in any way, shape, or form. I'll get you out of here on this, Scott. What do you think a timeline is for this? We keep flights canceled. Iranian Guard leave is now canceled. They are on the highest alert, saying war is imminent. What do you think in terms of days, weeks? What is your assessment of this?
I imagine right now that the telephones are ringing, not in Tehran, but in the underground bunkers in Mashhad and elsewhere, because the Iranian government has been displaced. They're on war footing. But the phones are ringing off the hook with Chinese and Russian diplomats calling in, trying to talk Iran down from this struggle, because this war isn't going to benefit anyone. It'll be very disruptive to China, very disruptive to Russia. And Iran will take those phone calls, and they will listen and they will consider. But I don't know if it's too little, too late to do this. Unless the Chinese and the Russians can talk the Iranians down, I think we're looking at a war within 24 hours. You can't pull people off leave, go on alert, and then just sit there like this. The Iranians have been preparing for this. They've had Ramadan. I said early on, I was like, Iran's going to strike immediately. I said, no, they're not. It's Ramadan. They're not going to strike during Ramadan. They're going to wait till after Eid. Eid was yesterday. But just because they didn't strike doesn't mean they weren't preparing. All of their missile forces were moving into place. Everybody's ready. It's like the Super Bowl, preparing for the Super Bowl. You don't get your team up and then say, oh, let's push the Super Bowl off a week. You just screwed your team's preparation up. You got them ready for the game. The game has to happen. Iran is ready for the game right now. I don't see them allowing this thing to drag on indefinitely. either there's a dramatic diplomatic intervention that can lower this thing down, or I think Iran strikes within 24 hours.
Jesus. Here we go. Scott Ritter, as always, great to see you. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having me.